You chase the win. You tell yourself that once you get there, wherever there is, it'll finally feel worth it. Maybe it's the promotion, the house, the book deal, the six-figure business, the top 1% status, and you do it. You grind, you outwork everyone around you. You get to the summit, you win. And then there's silence, not celebration, not peace, just silence. You look around and there's no one beside you. Not really. No one who truly saw what it took. No one who understands what you sacrificed, what you swallowed, what you had to walk through emotionally to stand where you're standing. And that's when it hits you. Winning alone doesn't feel like winning at all. We live in a culture that glorifies individual success, the solo rise, the self-made story, the Instagram caption that says, "No one helped me, I did it all on my own." And maybe that's true. Maybe you did carry it all on your own, but carrying everything alone comes at a price. A price we don't talk about because it doesn't fit the narrative we were told to chase. That price is disconnection. See, humans are wired for meaning, and meaning comes through connection, not followers, not likes, not applause. Connection, real, raw, vulnerable, in the trenches, with me not just when I shine, but when I break, kind of connection. And that doesn't come from winning. That comes from being seen, fully, beyond the titles, the accolades, and the curated identity you built to get to the top. You can win everything on the outside and lose yourself on the inside. You can impress the world and still lie in bed at night wondering if anyone really knows you, or worse, if they'd still love you if they did. This is the dark underbelly of so-called success. No one tells you how lonely it feels to stand in a room full of people who praise your accomplishments but don't know the weight of your silence. No one prepares you for the hollowness of a moment that was supposed to feel like the climax of your story, but instead feels like a scene where you're the only one who showed up. You thought reaching the top would finally silence the self-doubt. You thought it would prove your worth, but it doesn't. It amplifies the ache if that worth wasn't rooted in something deeper, if it wasn't nurtured in connection and love and belonging. That's the trap. We hustle to prove we're enough. And when we finally win, it doesn't land because we didn't feel like we were already enough without it. And that's when the identity crisis hits. Because if you've tied your self-worth to performance, then the moment you stop performing, you fear you'll lose it all. Not just the success, but the love, the validation, the identity. You become trapped in a version of yourself that's admired but not known. And that's what no one talks about. The cost of climbing a mountain alone is not just the exhaustion, it's the silence at the summit. It's the realization that while you were busy chasing success, you didn't build the intimacy required to share it. And when you don't have anyone to share it with, the victory starts to rot. Because the truth is, we don't just want to be seen for what we do. We want to be seen for who we are. Beyond the grind, beyond the image, beyond the version of ourselves that's palatable or profitable. We crave a space where we can drop the mask and still be loved, where our success is celebrated not just because it's impressive, but because someone walked beside us through the tears, the doubt, the insecurity, and they know how much it cost. That's when it becomes real. That's when it becomes enough, because it's no longer just about you. It's about being witnessed. And being witnessed is what makes it feel real. You're not weak for wanting that. You're not broken because the win didn't fix the ache. You're human, and humans need each other. We need more than applause. We need presence. We need more than admiration. We need connection. So if you're standing at the top and wondering why it still doesn't feel like you thought it would, maybe it's not because you did it wrong. Maybe it's because you did it alone. And maybe the next chapter isn't about chasing more. Maybe it's about finding the people who see the real you, the one behind the wins. Because that's where real success begins. And without that, all the noise in the world won't fill the silence inside you. They tell you the fall is supposed to come after a mistake, that it's something you caused, something you triggered, something you could have avoided if you'd just played it smarter. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes the fall shows up after you've done everything right. After the late nights, after the sacrifice, after the silent endurance that no one clapped for. You were doing all the right things. Building, climbing, staying disciplined. And then one day, the bottom just falls out. No warning, no cushion, no applause, just silence and what no one tells you is that sometimes success doesn't break you. What comes after does. Because nobody prepares you for the emotional whiplash of working your way up only to find the ground vanishing beneath your feet. You think you've made it. You start to exhale. You allow yourself to feel a little pride, a little peace, and then out of nowhere, it crumbles. The business loses momentum. The offer gets pulled. People ghost you. You're overlooked. Or worse, replaced. And the hardest part isn't the loss itself. It's the story you start telling yourself about why it happened. You start wondering if maybe you were the problem. Maybe they were right to doubt you. Maybe your best effort just wasn't good enough after all. Because if doing everything right still led to this, what else is there? And this is where it gets dangerous. Because in that moment of free fall, you're not just dealing with external loss. You're dealing with internal collapse. You start doubting everything. Your instincts, your worth, your future. Not because it makes sense, but because it hurts. You don't fall because you failed. You fall because the game was never built to catch you. This is the part no one posts about. The part no one warns you about. Because the fall doesn't always come from making bad decisions. Sometimes it comes from trusting the wrong people, from believing the rules were fair, from assuming your value would protect you. And it's not just disorienting, it's isolating. Because from the outside, people still think you're winning. They see the curated version of your life and assume you're fine. So you smile, you perform, you shrink your pain into silence because you don't want to be seen as weak, or worse, dramatic. But deep down, you're mourning something nobody else even knows you lost. You're mourning a version of your life you thought you were stepping into. You're mourning the belief that your hard work guaranteed something. And in that mourning, you start to pull away. You stop sharing. You stop dreaming out loud. Because if it all fell apart once, what's stopping it from happening again? So now you live cautious. You move quietly. You set smaller goals. You don't let yourself get too excited because you're still carrying the memory of that fall, still trying to understand how something you built with your whole heart could disappear like it didn't matter. But here's the truth that doesn't feel good but is good. The fall wasn't your fault, but what you do with it is your power. Not everything that collapses was meant to last, and not every loss is a curse. Sometimes it's a ruthless kind of clarity. Sometimes what breaks you also frees you from illusions, from attachments, from systems that were never built to hold your truth. Because when you fall and survive, you learn something most people never do, that your worth is not anchored to your wins, that who you are beneath the applause, beneath the titles, beneath the validation, that person is still standing, that person is still worthy, that person is still in. Maybe you needed to fall to realize that. Maybe you needed to lose the version of success you were chasing, to redefine what success actually means to you. Because the truth is, no one warned you about this part. They sold you a story where success was linear, where hard work guaranteed security, where doing the right thing protected you from pain. But that was never real. What's real is this: your value isn't proven by how high you climb, but by how deeply you stand after the fall. Because it reveals you. It strips away everything that doesn't matter and forces you to confront what does. And once you do, once you reclaim yourself without the need for proof or permission, that's where your power begins. So maybe the fall was never the end. Maybe it was the clearing. And maybe now you're finally ready to build something that can't be taken. There's a silence no one talks about, the one that comes after the win, after the applause fades, after the goals are checked off, and the title is earned, and the praise rolls in. You get everything you wanted, and then it's quiet, the kind of quiet that feels more like emptiness than peace. Because no one prepares you for the hollowness that sometimes follows achievement. No one tells you that you can be winning on paper and still feel like something essential is missing. You work for years to reach the summit of success they sold you. You sacrifice sleep, time, relationships. You push through doubt, through burnout, through ice. You hold your breath and keep climbing because you believe the view from the top will make it all worth it. And when you finally get there, yes, there's a moment, it's real. The recognition, the respect, maybe even the envy. But that moment is fleeting. And then you're left with a question that echoes louder than any cheer. Is this it? And if you're honest, the answer sometimes feels like no. Because success, as the world defines it, doesn't fill the spaces inside of you that were carved by loneliness, by disconnection, by the parts of yourself you had to bury just to keep moving forward. You got the reward, but the process cost you something. And now you feel the weight of. You missed birthdays. You stopped calling. You lost touch with the version of you that laughed more, breathed slower, loved deeper. It's not that you're ungrateful, you're proud, you earned, but you also see the truth now. Winning doesn't feel the way you thought it would, because you're not the same person who started the race. You became what the dream required: sharper, tougher, less forgiving, maybe even more guarded. You had to armor up to survive the climb, but now, standing at the top, you realized that armor didn't come off. You became a version of yourself that was built for battle, not for joy. And now you wonder how to feel whole in a life that you built, but no longer recognize. You look around and the people who were supposed to be there to celebrate with you, some of them are gone, drifted, or maybe you pushed them away without realizing it, telling yourself you'd reconnect when things calm down, when you finally made it. But life doesn't wait for success. People don't pause their love until you're ready to receive it again. Sometimes by the time you get there, the seats at the table are empty. And that's the part nobody told you about. That in the pursuit of winning, you might accidentally lose the very things that gave your life its meaning. Not because you were selfish, but because you were focused. Because you believed that sacrificing now would buy you freedom later. But what if the freedom you wanted was never about money or status, or being admired? What if it was always about the ability to be fully you, surrounded by people who saw you before the win, and still chose you after? That kind of wealth can't be measured in trophies or bank accounts. It's measured in the people who still call you just to hear in the peace you feel when you're not performing, not impressing, just being. And that's why winning alone never feels like enough. Because we weren't built for isolation. We were built for belonging. And you can't buy that. You can't earn it. You have to nurture it, protect it, and be honest enough to admit when it's slipping away. So maybe this isn't about giving up the win. Maybe it's about redefining what winning really means to you. Maybe it's not about the highest score or the loudest applause. Maybe it's about who's still with you when the spotlight turns off. Maybe it's about how connected you feel when no one's watching. Maybe success isn't just about being impressive, it's about being whole. And wholeness doesn't come from achievement. It comes from alignment, from knowing that who you are inside isn't being sacrificed for what you're building outside. It comes from choosing relationships over reputation, from trading validation for real connection, from remembering that you don't just want to win, you want to feel the win deep in your bones. Not because others are clapping, but because you know you didn't lose yourself getting there. You don't need more medals, you need more meaning. You don't need more praise, you need more peace. You don't need more followers, you need more people you can call when the world feels too heavy. That's the part you have to start fighting for now. Not just success, but the right kind of success. The kind that lets you sleep at night. The kind that makes room for love, for laughter, for soul. Because the truth is, winning alone is a quiet kind of pain. And the real victory is never having to celebrate it by yourself. There's a moment that comes after the success, after the long nights and early mornings, after the sacrifices and the silent battles, when you look in the mirror and realize you're still hungry. Not for more money, not for more fame, not even for another goal to conquer. You're hungry for something deeper, something that achievement didn't give you. It's not about climbing higher anymore. It's about finally feeling seen, fully. Not for what you do, but for who you are underneath it all. Because here's the truth that often goes unsaid. So many of us are chasing success because we think it will finally earn us the love we didn't get, the approval we never heard, the belonging we always felt just out of reach. We don't talk about it openly because it sounds ungrateful to admit that even with all the wins, we still feel invisible in ways that matter most. But deep down, we know we're not chasing the thing. We're chasing the feeling we think the thing will give us. It starts young. Maybe someone told you that being good wasn't enough. You had to be the best. Maybe love in your house came with conditions. Affection when you performed, attention when you achieved. So you learned to earn your worth. You learned that being impressive was safer than being vulnerable. That excellence was your armor. And now as an adult, the pattern continues. You excel, you over-deliver, you keep rising, but the deeper need, the one to be known beyond your accomplishments, that stays unmet. That's why winning alone feels so hollow. Because what you really want can't be found in applause. It's found in intimacy, in being loved when you're not performing, in being understood when you're not explaining, in being valued, not for your output but for your essence. And when you've spent your life building an identity around being enough for others, that kind of love feels unfamiliar sometimes, even uncomfortable, but the ache doesn't go away. It follows you into every quiet room. It lingers after it whispers after every trophy. Will they still love me if I stop winning? And for a lot of people, the answer feels too risky to test. So they keep running, keep achieving, keep hoping that the next level will finally silence that question for good. But it never does, because no amount of success can fill the space left by emotional neglect. No number can fix what was wounded in the absence of unconditional love. This isn't weakness. This is being human. And the longer you pretend you don't need connection, the more disconnected you become from others and from yourself. We're taught to admire the lone wolf, the person who needs no one, the self-made success. But that story leaves out the quiet truth. That kind of success is often built on a foundation of pain, and the cost is steep, because in the pursuit of becoming everything for everyone, you slowly forget how to be anything for yourself. You stop asking what makes you feel alive. You stop checking in with your heart. You become an expert in productivity and a stranger to peace. And when it all gets too heavy, when you finally pause long enough to breathe, you realize you're lonely, not just in the physical sense, but lonely in the way that comes from not being fully known by anyone. Because you've been hiding behind your highlight reel for so long, you're not even sure how to be real anymore. That's the deeper need that success can't satisfy, the need to be seen and loved in your rawness, in your joy, but also in your grief, in your strength, but also in your softness. That kind of love requires something most high achievers have never been taught: vulnerability. It feels risky, it feels like weakness, but it's the only path to connection that actually heals. It means allowing someone to see the cracks, not just the polish. It means telling the truth, even when your voice shakes. It means admitting that being strong all the time has worn you down. And when you do that, when you finally drop the performance, something beautiful happens. You stop feeling so alone. Because people can't truly love you if they don't truly know you. And they can't know you if you never let them in. So maybe it's time to redefine what success means to you. Not just in terms of goals, but in terms of how seen and held you feel in your own life. Maybe it's not about being admired by many, but being understood by a few. Maybe real success isn't about what you can prove, but what you can receive, the support, the quiet presence of someone who stays even when the spotlight dims. This kind of life doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence, from slowing down enough to feel, from making space for the parts of you that aren't productive, but are deeply precious. And the paradox is, when you finally start living from that place, when you stop needing to impress, you actually become more magnetic, more grounded, more at peace. Because people aren't drawn to perfection, they're drawn to realness, to the courage it takes to show up whole. And when you start valuing your inner world as much as your outer wins, you start attracting people who do the same. You stop settling for being admired from a distance, and start choosing to be loved up close. You don't need to earn your worth. You don't need to chase applause to prove you matter. You already do. And the people who are meant for you, they will see that even in your quietest moments. In the end, success is sweeter when it's shared. But fulfillment, that comes when you stop hiding, when you stop performing, when you start letting yourself be seen. Because that's the real victory, not being celebrated for what you do, but being loved for who you are.